self-evident why. So we have 1.1 million things to buy, right? So what do they comprise of? And this is startling if you haven't looked at the numbers before, right? 650,000 1 to 3 family homes, typically in Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, the Bronx, and some townhouses in Manhattan, right? That's 650,000. Typically, you drive your car, park your car in front, or park in the garage. Not the typical stuff we think of when we think of high-rise Manhattan living, okay? So that's 650. Then we're left with 374,000 co-ops, right? Which then leaves us with a remarkable 5-borough-wide inventory of 135,000 condos. That is every condo in all 5 boroughs, 135,000. 8.3 million people, 135,000 condos, right? 90,000 of those condos are in Manhattan, right? 89,624, whatever it was a couple weeks ago. I'm sure it's changed, but plus or minus. Okay? So, why do we say not so many foreign buyers? They're not buying to 1 to 3 family homes. They're not buying that many co-ops. They're relegated to buying out of 135,000 condos, 90,000 here in Manhattan, typically where they're going to buy. You know, there's not that many foreigners really buying, just factually, you know, and it sounds great, it makes good headlines, just not so accurate.
Is there a typical percentage that's on the market at any one given time of that 90?
What am I supposed to do?
Repeat the question.
Is there any, is there a typical amount of the 90,000 average percent? Well, you know, we know how, I don't know of condo versus co-op or that. I don't know that breakdown. But Greg Heim from our research group can definitely tell you that. You know, we know how many transactions there are typically in a year, all that, but I don't know the rough components of that. But I will tomorrow. Now, I got to go through all the numbers in my head to think about all the transaction volume, and I'll maybe, I may know it, I just don't recall it right now. So, we're looking at a marketplace that has if we're in the sales market, which most of us are, we're looking at 1.1 million things, right, to buy. Most of those 650,000 don't really impact us as much, okay? So we're more focused on the 374,000 condos and the 374,000 co-ops and the 135,000 condos. Not a lot of stuff to do it when you have 8.3 million people living here, right? So right away, it looks like, gee, we have a relative small amount of things to buy for such a large city. And that's the truth, and that's why. So we take that as a supply, and then we have to figure out how much supply gets added to the marketplace, right? Because that's the premise. I said we could go flood the market with glasses, but can we go flood the market with condo units, you know, to sell? Well, let's take a look. From 1951, let's say, okay, to about 1974, New York City produced, and I'm not talking about permits, so I'm going to talk about TCOs, temporary certificates of occupancy. Not what's thought about, not what's under construction, not what could be under construction, what was delivered with a TCO that you could move into, okay? Typically, New York City built rental, co-op, very few condos during that period, but co-op, condo, and rental. New York City produced roughly 55,000 units every single year, okay? Then the world changed in 1974, 5, 6, somewhere in there, and my supposition is we have never, ever recovered from that. We'd call it a recession, but in New York City it was a depression like we've never seen. And that is why our business, in my opinion, is so good. We have spent the entire time, well, let me just go through before I go through that. So that was in the 70s. Then what happened? Then we started producing apartments, okay? We never ever got back to that number again. We peaked with permits in 2006 with 33,000 permits. I would tell you the delivery of the TCOs was a lot less, but just the permits never even got back. And then if you look at permits for the past couple of years, 4,000, 3,000, 2,000, that's just permit, not delivered. Nothing, right? So we are on track to continue not to deliver product, and for the foreseeable future, it's very, very difficult to deliver. And then you talk about huge, giant projects, right? Time Warner, enormous project, 162 units. Okay? I mean, right? So what happened was during the irrational exuberance, right, of 05, 06, 07, more projects got built than ever before. So more architects got engaged, more engineers got engaged, more builders got engaged, more brokers got engaged in the system. The unit numbers were very small. All the buildings had 30, 50, 80 units. You didn't see 800 unit buildings going up as you did in the past, or 400 unit buildings in the past. You know, when I did the Sheffield, we had 845 units. Now there's not that many buildings of that size and stature anymore. So we had a lot of projects, and what people said, oh my God, the market is getting flooded. Yeah, it's getting flooded with a lot of little projects. But the collective didn't add up to that much. Again, and that's where market statistics are very important, but if you misread them, then they become actually in a very dangerous way. As a side note, I'll give you an example. When we were doing Sheffield, we had 845 units. My goal was to take that, and I thought studios were not the right way to go, and I wanted to compress and combine, which we ultimately did, into 572 units. One of my partners said, no, this is completely the wrong move. You know, you don't know what's going on. I said, tell me why. So he said, well, he has information from Douglas Elliman that shows that studios are selling more than any other type of unit in the marketplace at that time. I said, okay, I agree with you. So he goes, well, then why aren't we doing it? I said, why are studios selling more than any other unit? Because there's no 2s and 3s available. So people want to buy. So you could have great information and accurate, but if you misunderstand what it means, well, then it's not going to help you very much. So it's really important to understand the statistics and the information we get, because 1 and 1 thinking making 2 doesn't add up sometimes. So I'll tell you which it is. Studios are the very first to fall out of the market and the very last to come back. Just that's the fact. If you look at this month's statistics in Halstead, you'll see the rise of 1s, 2s, and 3s all the way up. And then you'll see studios, which goes up and down a little bit like that, because they're very sensitive in the marketplace. So again, you know, all the accurate information in that particular case, studios were selling like gangbusters because there's no other product to sell. So, you know, great answer, wrong deduction there, and whatever. So that's why these numbers, when we go through some of this stuff, to present them in a clear way, it's very compelling. The ultimate answer is it's always a decent, if not good, time to buy. You know, if you ever buy with the idea like a stock market where you have to sell to gain money, you know, it's a tough thing, because you don't want to sell into a bad market. But I'd tell you, you could almost never go wrong buying an apartment in New York City. And this is from 1946 on.